Hello, my friends. Welcome back. I am happy you are here today. Find a quiet place, sit comfortably, and let us travel together into a very old story. Today, we will talk about prisons. This is a real story. It is a story about fear, law, power, mistakes, and change. It is also a story about people asking one big question. What should society do when someone breaks the rules? This question is very old. Older than modern cities. Older than trains. Older than castles. Older than most countries we know today. People have asked this question for thousands of years. But here is something interesting. The prison, as we know it today, is not as old as many people think. In the ancient world, prison was often not the main punishment. It was more like a waiting room, a hard and dark waiting room, but still a waiting room. Long ago, in ancient Mesopotamia, people lived between two great rivers. These rivers were the Tigris and the Euphrates. The land was rich. People built cities. They made laws. They wrote on clay tablets. They traded grain, animals, and cloth. In those cities, rules were very important. A farmer had to pay what he owed. A worker had to finish his work. A person had to respect the king and the temple. When someone did not follow the rules, the leaders had to decide what to do. Sometimes a person was held in a building. Maybe this person owed money. Maybe this person was waiting for a decision. Maybe this person was part of an argument between families. This was not yet a modern prison, but it was one of the early roots of prison. Imagine a small room made of mud brick. The air is warm. The door is closed. Outside, people walk in the market. They buy bread. They sell oil. They talk loudly. But inside the room, one person waits. He does not know what will happen next. This is one of the first simple ideas of prison, a place where a person is kept, a place where a person cannot leave, a place where the city says, "Wait here. We will decide your future later." As time passed, other ancient societies used places like this too. In ancient Greece, people could be held before a trial. In ancient Rome, people could be held before punishment. The Romans had places for prisoners in their great cities. But again, prison was usually not the final punishment. The ancient world often used other punishments. Some were public, some were harsh, some were meant to make people afraid. Today, we do not need to describe them strongly. We only need to understand one simple thing. For a long time, prison was not mainly a place for long sentences. It was a place for waiting, a place for debt, a place for people without power, a place for people the rulers wanted to control. Now let us move forward in time. Let us walk into the Middle Ages. Imagine a stone castle on a hill. The walls are high. The wind is cold. A village sits below the castle. The lord of the castle controls the land. Inside many castles, there were small rooms under the ground. These rooms were sometimes used to hold people. We often call them dungeons. The word sounds frightening. And yes, many of these places were not kind places. But even then, prison was still often temporary. A person might be held until his family paid money. A person might be held until the Lord made a decision. A person might be held because he was an enemy in a war. The prison was part of power. It showed who was strong and who was weak. In towns and cities, there were also jails. These jails were often small and crowded. They were not clean. They were not organized like modern prisons. Many people inside had not yet been judged in court. Some were debtors. This means they owed money and could not pay. Think about that for a moment. A person could be locked up because he was poor. Maybe he borrowed money for food. Maybe his shop failed. Maybe his harvest was bad. He could not pay. So he was sent to jail. But if he was in jail, how could he work? If he could not work, how could he pay? It was a sad circle, and many people began to see that this system did not solve the problem. For hundreds of years, prisons were often places of confusion. Young people and old people were held together. Sick people and healthy people were held together. People waiting for trial and people already judged were held together. There was little order. There was little care. Then slowly, in Europe, ideas began to change. People started to ask new questions. Should punishment only hurt people? Or should it also teach people? Should society only be afraid of people who broke rules? Or should society try to help them become better? These questions became stronger in the 1700s. This was a time of new ideas. People talked about reason, science, human rights, and reform. Reform means changing something to make it better. In England, one man became very important in the story of prisons. His name was John Howard. He was born in 1726. He was not a king. He was not a great general, but he saw something that troubled him deeply. John Howard visited many jails. He saw dirty rooms. He saw people with little food. He saw people who were sick. He saw prisoners who had to pay fees to jailers. Sometimes, even after a person was found not guilty, he could not leave because he could not pay the jail fee. John Howard believed this was wrong. He wrote about what he saw. He told the public. He said prisons should be cleaner. Prisoners should have better air. Jailers should be paid by the government, not by prisoners. There should be rules and inspection. His work did not fix everything at once. History almost never changes so quickly. But his voice mattered. He helped people see prisons in a new way. He helped turn a hidden problem into a public question. Around the same time, another idea was growing. Some people believed that prison could be a place for reflection. Reflection means quiet thinking. They believed that if a person had silence, work, and time to think, he might change his life. This idea was especially important in Pennsylvania, in America. In the city of Philadelphia, some reformers wanted a new kind of prison. They did not want only a jail for waiting. They wanted a penitentiary. This word is important. Penitentiary comes from the idea of penitence. Penitence means feeling sorry and wanting to change. So a penitentiary was supposed to be a place where a person could think deeply, feel sorry, and become different. In 1790, part of the Walnut Street Jail in Philadelphia was changed for this idea. It was one of the early steps toward the modern prison. People believed quiet time and work could reform prisoners. Then came a much bigger experiment. Eastern State Penitentiary. It opened in Philadelphia in 1829. At the time, it was one of the most famous prisons in the world. Imagine the building. It looked almost like a castle. It had high stone walls. Inside, long halls came out from the center like the spokes of a wheel. Each prisoner had a separate cell. Each cell had a small exercise yard. Some cells even had heating and running water, which was unusual at that time. Many visitors came from other countries to see it. They thought it was modern. They thought it was scientific. They thought it might be the future of prisons. The idea was simple. Each prisoner would stay mostly alone. He would work alone. He would read religious books. He would think about his life. Reformers hoped that silence would help him change. But the idea had a dark side. Many people suffered in this silence. Human beings need other human beings. They need voices, faces, kindness, and connection. Some visitors began to worry that too much isolation could hurt the mind. One famous visitor was Charles Dickens, the English writer. He visited Eastern State in 1842. He did not like what he saw. He believed the system of deep isolation was cruel and wrong. This is an important lesson in our story. Sometimes people try to create a better system. They use good words, reform, reflection, improvement. But the real life of people inside the system may be very different. A good idea can become harmful if it forgets the human heart. While the Pennsylvania system used separation, another system grew in New York. It was called the Auburn system. In this system, prisoners worked together during the day, but they had to stay silent. At night, they slept in separate cells. The Auburn system became very influential. Many prisons copied it because prison labor helped pay for prison costs. Prisoners made goods. They worked in workshops. The prison became more organized, more controlled, and more connected to the economy. By the 1800s, prison was no longer just a waiting place. It was becoming a main punishment. Instead of many older punishments, courts more often sent people to prison for months or years. This was a huge change in history. Society began to measure punishment with time. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. A person's lost time became the punishment. Think about that idea. Time is life. Time is mornings and evenings. Time is family meals. Time is walking outside. Time is hearing birds. Time is seeing children grow. When a court gives a prison sentence, it takes away free time from a person's life. That is why prison is such a serious thing. In the 19th century, prisons spread across many countries. Some were built with long halls. Some were built with small cells. Some were in cities. Some were far away from cities. Governments believed prisons could create order. But prisons also created new problems. They were often crowded. They were often unfair to poor people. They often did not understand mental health. They often punished more than they helped. Still, reformers continued to work. In England, a woman named Elizabeth Fry became known for helping women prisoners. She visited Newgate Prison in London. She saw women and children living in terrible conditions. She brought clothes, education, and support. She believed prisoners were still human beings. Her work was gentle but strong. She showed that kindness could enter even a dark place. She showed that reform was not only about buildings and rules, it was also about seeing people clearly. As the world moved into the 20th century, prisons changed again. Some countries began to talk more about rehabilitation. Rehabilitation means helping a person return to society and live better. Education programs began in some prisons. Work training began in some places. Doctors and social workers became more involved. But the story was never simple. Some prisons tried to help. Some prisons stayed harsh. Some were safe. Some were dangerous. Some people left prison and built new lives. Others returned again and again. This is why the history of prison is not only a history of walls, it is a history of ideas. What do we believe about people? Can people change? What is justice? What is mercy? How do we protect society? How do we protect human dignity? These questions are still with us today. Now let us return to the beginning of the story. The first prisons were not like modern prisons. They were holding places. A person waited there before judgment, or waited for payment, or waited for the ruler's decision. Then, over many centuries, prison became something bigger. It became a punishment in itself. Then it became a place that promised reform. Then it became a system with rules, workers, buildings, and long sentences. No one person invented the prison. No single day created it. The prison grew slowly. It grew from fear, from law, from debt, from religion, from reform, from politics, and from the human wish to control danger. But the most interesting part is this. The prison began as a place for waiting. Then it became a place for time. Society began to say, "You broke the rule, so we will take away your free time." And because time is so precious, every prison story is also a human story. Behind every wall, there is a name. Behind every cell, there is a life. Behind every law, there is a choice made by society. This does not mean every person in prison is innocent. It does not mean rules are not important. Rules are important. Safety is important. Justice is important. But history teaches us to be careful. It teaches us not to forget the person inside the punishment. It teaches us that a society is judged not only by how it treats the powerful, but also by how it treats the powerless. Today, many old prisons are museums. People walk through their halls quietly. They look at the doors. They look at the small rooms. They imagine the lives that passed through those places. At Eastern State Penitentiary, visitors can still see the long stone corridors. They can see how ambitious the idea was and how heavy it became. The building tells two stories at the same time. One story is about hope for reform. The other story is about loneliness and pain. That is why the origin of the prison is such an important story. It is not just about crime. It is not just about punishment. It is about how humans learn, slowly, imperfectly, sometimes wisely, sometimes badly. It is about our search for justice. And maybe the best ending to this story is not a final answer. Maybe it is a quiet question. When someone does wrong, what should we do next? Should we only close a door? Or should we also open a path back? History does not answer this question for us, but history helps us ask it better. Thank you for listening, my friends. I hope this story helped you learn English in a calm and interesting way. You listened to many important words today. Prison, justice, reform, punishment, and change. You are doing very well. Every story you hear helps your English grow little by little. Please tell me what story you would like to hear next. And if this story helped you, you can like, comment, and subscribe. It helps us make more peaceful English stories for you. Keep learning, keep listening, and be proud of your journey.